Hey, Rebecca Barker here. With the Elephant Key and just some random thoughts today. I pulled a reading for the Feminine Collective today. I've had some things on my mind a bit. So I got the Eight of Swords, the Sun, and the Hermit. And what that means to me is the woman in the Eight of Swords is bound, blindfolded, but she's standing next to a bunch of swords. And she's got her feet touching the water. Water represents emotion. Her feet are in the water. And behind her is a kingdom of abundance behind her. But she's so wrapped up in her own victimization and afraid to be vulnerable. She's just stuck and doesn't see that all she has to do is cut herself free with one of the swords and take off the blindfold and see the truth. And the present position was the Sun, which is illuminating, seeing the truth, seeing the benefits and the gifts. The Sun brings life, just much like women. The Sun nurtures and germinates and creates growth. And then in the future card was the Hermit. The Hermit goes back in, kind of seeks wisdom and knowledge, and not so much outside influences, more internalized wisdom. And so my thoughts on that are this. In light of some things that have come up in the recent news, I'm taken back to January 13th, 2021. It was a Wednesday, and I believe it might have been Indiana executed a woman named Lisa Montgomery. Lisa Montgomery had murdered a woman and ripped her baby from her, used a kitchen knife to rip her baby from her belly. And she paraded on as though the baby was hers because she had fictitiously created this narrative where she was pregnant. And when she couldn't produce a baby, she found a woman who was pregnant and proceeded to meet up with her, murder her, and steal her baby. She was caught. She was sentenced to death. She should have been punished for what she did. She should have been penalized. She should have definitely been punished. But what a lot of people didn't know about Lisa Montgomery is that her childhood was wrought with all manner of sexual trauma and abuse. She was made to stay out in a makeshift shed behind her house where her mother would pimp her out and told her she had to go to work and sleep with men to pay the utilities and earn her keep. She was physically abused, mentally and sexually abused for the majority of her life. That doesn't excuse her behavior, but it certainly gives a reason for it. She was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. That doesn't mean that everybody with bipolar disorder is out here murdering people and doing unjust things. But, when we put things in perspective, how we treat and penalize those who create trauma as opposed to those who respond to the trauma they received. And it's this big circle, isn't it? Between men and women, there's a huge misunderstanding about what our purpose is and how we're supposed to communicate with each other. since World War II, when the women were entered into the workforce. There weren't a lot of women who wanted to go into the workforce, but what option did they have? Their sons, husbands, brothers, and fathers were often serving in the war for our freedoms. So women decided to step up to the plate and move into the workforce. And by God, they were pretty damn good at what they were doing. Who knew that they could produce mass quantities of production and make things work pretty damn well? And then they were able to provide for their families and for their country. So that was a turning point for the American family. And then when the men came back, it was a little difficult to convince those women to get back in the kitchen and take their place in the household as it had been historically. You know, it's like telling someone they can't leave the yard, telling them that they have to stay within the perimeter of the yard, and then you go away on vacation and tell them that they can go all over the city, explore all the things. But when you come back from vacation, they have to stay back in the yard again. No, you can't leave the yard. You have to stay in the yard. I know that you enjoyed everything that was out there and you experienced this type of freedom and confidence that you hadn't felt before. That was nice now. Thank you for that. Now you need to stay in the yard. You can plant flowers in the yard. You can make yourself a little piece of heaven in the yard, but you just can't leave the yard. Well, that was a little difficult to accept, I think. I mean, I can only imagine. I wasn't there. So then we proceed into, civil rights and women's movement and women's rights. And women knew that they were capable of doing things, some things. And they wanted the same rights and the same pay and same consideration. Now, everybody has their thoughts on what's fair and what's not fair. But I can tell you with a degree of certainty that things aren't fair. Things will probably never be fair. There are a lot of expectations of what rights mean to us. My personal opinion is that anything that is given to you by someone else isn't freedom. It's only freedom if you fight for it and you receive it because you earned it. And when someone gives it to you, that means they have the ability to take it away from you as well. So, women know that rights are only, if rights are given to us, then they can easily be taken away from us. It's a little harder to explain that to men, I think. Just because historically women have been given and then taken away and, villainized. And I don't think all men want to villainize women or minimize them. I don't think that's their purpose. I don't think that's what they intend to do. I don't think they're out there just saying, oh, there's a woman, she's stupid, she doesn't know anything, she's not capable of doing anything that we do. Oh, look at her, she thinks she's so tough. She thinks she's amazing. She's trying to be a man. She's going to try to be powerful and rule over me. And who the hell does she think she is? She's not nobody. I don't believe that that's the way all men think at all. But I think there's a huge misunderstanding between the opposite sex. And there's this thought that equality means that someone else is taking away all your pieces of the pie. Like, well, if I give them some, that's less for me. And that's not the way it works. Giving something to someone else doesn't take something away from you. It adds to you. By giving someone else a freedom, that opens the door for people to work together to create more abundance, more safety, more growth, more understanding, more unity. But you have these people who think if I give her an inch, she's going to take a mile, and then there will be nothing left for me. And then I'm going to have to cotton her belief system. And that's not the way it is. I'm lucky enough to have a partnership where I'm able to share what I believe, he shares what he believes, and then we come together and make a compromise. We're not always 100% happy about what we decide to do, but it's always in the best interest of us as a couple, as a family. It's sort of a win-win. But Lisa Montgomery lost her life because she wasn't given the correct mental health. She wasn't given the correct resources. She was a woman who was abused and ended up taking someone else's life because of her unresolved trauma. I'm having a hard time sitting with that. I will not excuse her taking someone else's life or kidnapping a child. She lost her life. We really need to examine. We need to re-examine the way we treat people with trauma and abuse and all manner of wounds that have never been healed. And why we excuse the acts of some people and don't excuse the acts of others, regardless of their sex. That's just my thoughts today. I'm not asking you to think the way I do. This is just the way my mind works. Hope you have a wonderful day, and that's it.